Hey everyone, and welcome back. And today we are diving deep into the last new moon of 2025 happening on December 19th at 7:43 p.m. Central Time, and it's happening in the fiery and expansive and abundant sign of Sagittarius. And Sagittarius energy kind of loves like this, expansive, open feeling of newness and anything is possible. And so it kind of enjoys this feeling of like it's going on a journey or a quest. And in this lunation chart, it's kind of like it's saying like, okay, yes, you can go on this quest, but also make sure to pack some snacks and pack a map and a compass and, anything else that you might need along this journey and this quest that you're about to embark on. Because this new moon is squaring both Saturn and Neptune in Pisces, and it's also conjunct the planet Venus, and it's out of sign conjunct the planet Mars, and it's also ruled by the planet Jupiter that's traveling retrograde in the sign of Cancer. So it's like we're starting this fresh cycle of hope and optimism, but it also comes with some boundaries, and we also kind of need to make a plan. We can't just fly by the seat of our plants for this new moon. So if you're interested in how this new moon may be experienced along with all the other astrology we've got going on, then feel free to like and subscribe and hit that notification bell so you can stay updated on what's going on in the sky. And also, if you're new here, hi, I'm Mackenzie, aka Astromac, and I'm a professional astrologer, and I talk all things astrology on this channel. And I also have a Patreon where when you join, you get access to a group Discord and all kinds of astrology goodies. And I also offer a bunch of different astrology readings, so if you're interested in any of that, then I'll link all of that down below. Now, before we get any further, let's pull up the chart for this new moon and dive right in. And so, as always, new moons are always about new beginnings, because it's when the sun and the moon come together in the sky and they form a beautiful conjunction and they're blending their energies, and it just signals the beginning of new cycles. And so new moons are also known as dark moons because there's no moonlight outside. The sun and the moon, they're right together, and so there's no moonlight and there's no light out at night. And so thinking back to the time of our ancestors, when there's no moonlight outside, that means that, you're staying inside. And so because of this, new moons tend to be associated with times of rest and reflection and introspection. And it's kind of like we're all pulling our energy inward, and we're doing some, resting and reflecting on those seeds and those intentions that we want to plant and then nurture over the upcoming months. And so this is a time to really reflect on what it is that you really truly want. And with this new moon happening at the 28th degree, and this being one of 7 consecutive new moons happening at this 28th degree, it's kind of like this is still a new beginning because it is a new moon, but it's kind of like the new beginning that comes from some kind of ending. And so it's kind of like we're going to be, letting go of some things while also moving forward, because it is happening in the sign of Sagittarius, and Sagittarius is all about that forward movement and that momentum moving forward. So this is a new beginning around our beliefs and our belief systems, and that can be personal beliefs or spiritual or religious or political, all kinds of beliefs are up on deck. And so again, with this new beginning, it's kind of we're starting a new cycle around our beliefs, but also at the same time, we're letting go of something. And so it's kind of like we're letting go of those limiting beliefs in order to move into this next chapter or this next era with beliefs that really suit who we are and who we want to become in the future. And so I was kind of viewing it as it's like we're writing and finishing up those final paragraphs in a final chapter before we finish a book and before we enter into a new book later into 2026, when all of these outer planets make their final ingress into a new sign. And so this is a new beginning around something that we've probably already started, or something that we may already have an awareness of. Maybe you already have an awareness of a limiting belief that you have either about yourself or whatever it might be. And so you have this awareness that you have this belief, and so under this new moon we're working on rewriting those and rewiring that belief, and kind of letting go of that limiting part of whatever it might be, and letting go of the thing that doesn't serve you, because this is the last new moon of 2025. And so this is a great opportunity to do some reflection on the year and really reflect on what beliefs held you back and kept you small, and maybe kind of leave that in 2025 before we enter 2026. Because with a new moon happening in the sign of Sagittarius, I mean, like, just look at its glyph. It's all about, like, this sense of forward movement where we're looking upwards and forwards to the future and to the horizon and, like, what's possible in the future. And so this new moon does kind of bring this energy of, like, forward motion, whether it's on a new idea or a new belief, or it's kind of like a new sense of possibility and hope and optimism starts to take shape. And if you haven't watched my Sagittarius 101 video yet, I highly recommend going back and watching that because I gave a lot of good information on, the energy of Sagittarius. And so that'll give you a better idea of like this new beginning that's happening under this new moon. But basically, Sagittarius is the mutable fire sign of the zodiac. And so it's fiery and it's excitable and it's enthusiastic and bold and inspired energy being a fire sign, but it's also changeable and adaptable and movable and flexible and expansive being a mutable sign. And mutable signs are the signs that straddle seasons. And so they are these transition signs that really help us transition from one season into the next. And so with Sagittarius, it's helping us transition from these fall months into the winter. And so it's these mutable signs that really help us to stay, flexible and adaptable and open during these times of change. And as an archetype, Sagittarius is the explorer and the traveler and the wanderer, and it's the student that is turned into the teacher. And so they're also like the philosophers and the wise sages and the visionaries and, the truth seekers and the meaning seekers. And so these are the people that are able to kind of like, take those leaps of faith off of a cliff's edge and really trust that they will land safely wherever they're meant to. And so we have a lot of Sagittarius energy in this new moon chart, including the sun and moon, obviously that's a new moon, but we also have Mercury and Venus in the sign of Sagittarius as well. And so this is really an invitation to invite more Sagittarius energy into our lives, including like, more optimism and more hope and more faith and, more fun and more adventures and more expanding experiences, because it's a sign that is associated with like, expanding our minds and expanding our horizons and expanding our consciousness. And so this is an invitation to, invite more of these things into our lives that, expand us outside of our comfort zone. And so that means, new adventures and new journeys and new quests and just new experiences overall, and inviting more of this into our lives. And so if you want to invite more of these things into your life, then you also have to be open to, different ways that they may present themselves. And so under this new moon and like, in this new cycle moving forward, I really challenge you to really seek out those things that inspire you and those things that just like uplift your spirit. And I know it sounds cliche, but maybe just try looking at things like glass half full and just seeing, like switching your perspective that way and just seeing how it makes you feel. I'm not saying you have to live your whole life like this and look at everything like glass half full, but, maybe just try changing your perspective a little bit and, just seeing like how it feels in your body. And I know that the world that we live in right now, like it can feel pretty dark and scary. And when we check the news, it's easy to feel very like doom and gloom and that it's like never going to get better and everything fucking sucks. And, I'm not going to sugarcoat things because, things do suck right now. And so I'm not saying like to pretend that these things aren't happening and like these things don't exist and to like try looking at genocide like it's a glass half full situation. Like that's not what I'm saying at all. But what I'm saying is to try and look for the hope and to, look to those things that inspire you. Because it is kind of like, two sides of the same coin where, we see these things that are dark and scary, but also you can't forget about those things that are inspiring and those things that can help kind of, renew our sense of hope and optimism and faith in humanity and faith in ourselves. Like, both can exist at the same time. And so all we can really do is kind of like make do and make the best out of whatever situation we have and whatever situation we're in. So that doesn't mean pretending like these dark and these bad things don't exist, but it's trying to remember that, a lot of good also exists and a lot of hope and a lot of, faith is still out there. And I'm using these terms, good and bad, very loosely because I don't like those terms, but until I can find a better way to explain it, that's what I'm using. And so again, like under this new moon, maybe starting a cycle of looking for the things that uplift your spirit and the things that inspire you and the things that bring you faith in humanity again. And also start looking for proof and ways of seeing and believing that, the universe wants what's best for you, and looking for ways that the universe has your back and that you deserve what you truly want, and really allow yourself to experience the abundance of this Sagittarius energy in that way. And abundance shows up in all kinds of ways, not just like money and possessions, although it definitely can, but it can be like an abundance of love, or an abundance of like fulfilling relationships, or an abundance of safety and security, whatever it might be. Just really look at, ways that you are abundant already. Because the key is this ability to be able to switch your perception, and again, to be, looking for the inspiration and looking for the hope and looking for the abundance that already exists. Because when you can switch your perception, it really switches things in your brain to be able to, seek those things out and then attract more of that into your life. And so this is a new beginning around like our worldview and our faith and our beliefs and our philosophy on life, and just like our long-term direction that we're headed in. And so it's an invitation to invite more expanding experiences and enthusiasm and fun and adventures into our lives as well. And Sagittarius is this energy that just wants to be like, fully immersed in life, and it does things for the experience of it. And so this would be a great new moon to, set new intentions around, those experiences that you want to have in the future. But like I said earlier, there is a bit of tension in this chart because this new moon is squaring both Saturn and Neptune in Pisces. And so it's kind of like as expansive and abundant and enthusiastic and big and fun and adventurous as this new moon wants to be. It's kind of like Saturn is putting on some limits, and it's putting some boundaries on this. And so this is a new beginning that really asks us to also be responsible with these new experiences we want to have. And so that doesn't mean that there's any less hope under this new moon, but it's just hope with a little bit of traction. And so we can still, dream big and dream, into the future, but don't dream so big that you won't be able to bring these dreams and these visions and these goals into the physical reality. And so it's kind of like dream big, but, be a little more realistic. And if you're in my Patreon, then you've probably already read this, but I wrote about how this is kind of a quieter Sagittarius moon that has a kind of like sobering quality that's all about this intentional resetting of our beliefs and our philosophies and our worldviews. And so it's one that really asks us to, be honest about what kind of beliefs are you living by, and which ones are you just, saying that you believe that you don't actually believe deep down. Because Sagittarius wants truth, and it wants us to be honest, and it wants us to find the deeper meaning, and it wants forward movement outside of our comfort zones. Yet with this square to both Saturn and Neptune in Pisces, it's kind of like we're being met with a bit of confusion and a bit of resistance. It's not like a easy flowing new moon. It's kind of like we're getting met with like this push-pull energy where we're expanding and contracting and expanding and contracting. But, both are important for our lives on this planet. It's like breathing. We're inhaling and we're exhaling, and that's kind of the point of this new moon. And so with this Neptune aspect, I was kind of getting this visual of how it's like we're moving through this dense fog, yet we're still equipped with everything that we might need to get through that fog, including a compass. And that compass is our values. And in astrology, Venus is our values. And so I thought that was kind of perfect because this new moon is conjunct the planet Venus. And so again, with this new moon squaring both Saturn and Neptune in Pisces, I really do feel like this is significant because this is, Saturn and Neptune's final pass through Pisces over the next couple of months before they ingress into Aries in February of 2026, which is, that symbolic of a brand new era beginning next year. But squares are not like these flowing, harmonious energies, squares are tense, and so they can feel frustrating, and like we're being met with these obstacles, and like we're being asked to make a decision. But the way I try and look at it is it's this frustration that comes right before we have to get creative and innovate and come up with a solution with, whatever we may be dealing with. And so with this square to Saturn, it can make things feel a bit heavier, and things aren't going as fast as we'd like them to be, or like we're being met with like some kind of resistance. And so it's kind of like Saturn is like that that adult in the room when you're trying to have a good time. Saturn's like, no, you need to be responsible and you need to work hard, you know? Like Saturn is the part of us that knows that like enthusiasm and hope and these visions alone aren't what actually builds a bridge or builds a house or, you know, whatever it might be. Like you actually need to, you know, come up with a plan and you need to, you know, dig out a hole and then lay down that foundation and then, you know, start, you know, pouring in the concrete or laying down the bricks one brick at a time or, you know, nailing in the wood slabs one at a time. And all of this takes time, you know, you can't really build a house overnight unless you want a shittily made house that'll like blow over by a strong wind. But Saturn really teaches us like, you know, the value of patience and discipline and, you know, building something sturdy and stable and long lasting and something that will stand the test of time. And with Saturn in the sign of Pisces, it's kind of like it's this spiritual responsibility and this spiritual discipline and this spiritual maturity. But also with Neptune so close by at this 29th degree of Pisces, it's really softening some of like those harsher and stricter and disciplined, you know, Saturnian qualities. Because Neptune really like dissolves boundaries and it heightens our sensitivity and it kind of like makes things fuzzy and blurry around the edges. And so again, it can feel a little foggy and it can add this sense of like, you know, where we don't really know like where we're going. And so when we don't really know like where we're going, the best thing that we can do is just, you know, take things one step at a time. And so like I've been saying, like definitely dream big, but also, you know, set intentions around taking these practical steps in order to make these dreams a reality. And if any doubts or disappointments or, you know, feelings of comparison or disillusionment or, you know, like those coulda, woulda, shouldas, if any of those things kind of creep in, you know, that doesn't mean that you're doing anything wrong, but maybe it is a time to kind of assess what is truly sustainable for you and what you truly want moving forward. Because remember, you know, this lunation is about inviting more hope and inspiration and optimism into our lives, but not doing so blindly. Like, you know, no blind faith and no blind optimism. It's really about discerning, like, you know, which dreams and which visions and which goals for the future are worth committing to and which ones no longer feel aligned. And so really try to use this time to reflect and refocus in order to, you know, gain a little more clarity as we're in this fog around like, you know, where you're wanting to go and where you're wanting to shoot that Sagittarius arrow into the future. And if you're not really sure, like, you know, where it is that you're wanting to go and where you're wanting to shoot this arrow, then, you know, this is a time to really look at your values. You know, like, what is it that you value most in life? And then also looking to those things that inspire you and those things that just really like uplift your spirit and make you feel like, you know, life is worth a living. Like, look to the people that inspire you. You know, what is it about these people that inspires you? Because the thing about this is that, you know, whatever it is that inspires you is also somewhere within you, because you wouldn't even be able to like recognize this quality in someone else if it wasn't also somewhere within you. And so with this new moon happening in Sagittarius, you know, we might kind of have this awareness where we've been kind of living our lives inside of our comfort zone and inside of like our own little box. And, you know, maybe we're happy here. Maybe, you know, we're content being in this little box and, you know, we found peace or whatever. But now with this Sagittarius new moon scoring both Saturn and Neptune in Pisces, I kind of feel like, you know, the boundaries of our comfort zone and the boundaries of like our own little box are starting to dissolve a little bit. And so it's kind of like we don't really know what's outside of our comfort zone. And that's like that Neptune fog we may be feeling. So again, this is our invitation to kind of expand beyond our comfort zone and explore a little bit. And, you know, it's not like you have to take like this giant leap of faith outside of your comfort zone. And maybe it's just something small and starting small, because we do kind of have to do it within the limits of Saturn. Like, let's start making some plans in order to, you know, start expanding outside of our comfort zone, just one step at a time. So dream big and envision a better life for yourself, but then, you know, reflect on what needs to change in order for you to get there. And, also remember we have a ton of mutable energy right now, and so it's really helping us with this change. And so again, with these squares, it's kind of like our beliefs are really being challenged under this new moon, because again, we've got like this Sagittarius and Pisces energy, but one thing that connects them and the thing that they have in common is faith and belief. And so this could be really helping us to, rewrite these beliefs or clear away any beliefs that no longer serve us. Like, maybe you have a belief that you really can't expand outside of your comfort zone because you're scared or whatever, or maybe you don't believe in yourself enough. And so like maybe you deal with things like self-doubt or comparison or whatever. Or maybe you feel like you don't deserve the things that you want most in life. And so under this new moon, it's like we're clearing these things away and rewriting these beliefs in a way that serves us better. Because again, this new moon is happening at that 28th degree. So it's like towards the very end of the sign. And so there's this feeling of like, something is coming to an end in order for us to begin something new. And so there's this feeling of like we have to, let go of something in order to expand into these new possibilities. And so again, you can imagine that we're like on this journey and we're in the part of the story where things might feel foggy or uncertain, and we have that inner guiding compass. And so it's kind of like you can also imagine that we've got like a really heavy backpack on, and so like in that backpack, there's probably some things that you don't need, and all it's doing is just like weighing you down and slowing you down. And so there's probably some things in that backpack that don't serve us anymore. And so under this new moon, it's kind of like we're letting go of those things that we don't really need anymore, that are, only just like slowing us down and weighing us down and keeping us stuck where we are. Because if we keep holding on to these things that we don't really need anymore, whether it's like, an old pattern or an old cycle or an old belief or an old vision that we had for ourselves, we're not going to be able to, move forward and expand beyond that. And so there is this energy of like, letting go and then taking a strategic leap of faith. Venus is also conjunct this new moon. And so Venus kind of like softens things up a little bit. I always kind of envision Venus as being like, honey in a warm cup of tea. It just kind of like sweetens things up a little bit. And so this is really asking us to really tune into what it is we truly value and that we truly want. And that is that inner guiding compass that we have on this like foggy journey. And so those things that we value and those things that we want and those things that inspire us are kind of, pointing us in a direction in which we can, shoot that Sagittarius arrow. And so this is a good time to really take a look at our values and, if we've been living in alignment with those, or even if those things that we like want to manifest, if those are aligned with our values, and if there is some discordance or some conflicting energy, then this is a time to really, examine what it is that we truly want. And so again, look to those things that really inspire you and uplift you, and also look at the things that you value about yourself. Like, this would be a great new moon to, make a list of things that you like about yourself and the things that like you value about yourself, and write a list of things that you're good at. Like this can also really help with like, switching your perception and, seeking these things out and, looking at things like glass half full. Because when we're, seeking those things out that we like about ourselves and seeking out those things that, we're already good at, that really helps. Because if we're constantly looking at ourselves through this lens of like, what needs to be improved or what could be better, and like with a really critical eye, that doesn't leave a whole lot of room for us to like, focus on those things that, we're already good at. Because Venus is not only just our values, but it's like, how we value ourselves. And so that includes things like self-worth and worthiness and, what we feel that we deserve. So that could also include those beliefs that we have about ourselves. Like if you have a limiting belief that like you don't deserve nice things, then you will not be able to receive nice things no matter what, because our beliefs really do shape that box that we put ourselves in. And so we're really being asked to expand beyond that box. Like, maybe you've been settling for crumbs within your relationships, and, deep down, that you deserve more. So don't be afraid to speak your truth under this new moon, but then, honor your truth and then align yourself in that direction, because it carries more magnetism with this Venus conjunction. And this new moon is ruled by the planet Jupiter, who is currently traveling retrograde in the sign of Cancer. So this kind of like turns our search for expansion and meaning inward. And so it's like we're on this quest for a deeper meaning. And this quest is one of internal growth that comes through these Cancerian themes of like sensitivity and our ancestral patterns and home and those places and people where you seek that feeling of safety and belonging. And so it's like before we continue to move forward, we're being asked to really tend to our inner foundations and really nurturing ourselves on a deep level and filling up our emotional cup. So really ask yourself, like, what nurtures you and what feels like home? Because it is kind of like we're expanding our inner world during this time with this Jupiter retrograde through Cancer, but it's expanding our inner world in order to, receive these Jupiterian blessings and make room for more abundance. But it's interesting because Jupiter is also forming a trine to this Saturn Neptune conjunction in Pisces, also very significant. And so it's kind of like these outer planets are trying to work together. And so it's kind of like Saturn is saying, like, I'll help you build this like safe space and a solid and secure foundation or support system so that you do feel emotionally secure. And so it's like Saturn is helping kind of like, lay down that scaffolding for us to expand upon. But then it's kind of like Saturn is like, before I help you out, you have to set some boundaries. And so Saturn is helping us to set boundaries that, protect our peace and protect our time and protect our emotions and protect our energy. And so really like this lunation really wants us to, start questioning our beliefs and our belief systems and really look at where they may be like, boxing us in and, keeping us small and preventing us from expanding. This lunation also wants us to, choose a direction to start moving in, even if the path doesn't feel clear quite yet. And when things don't feel clear, again, it's tuning into our values and tuning into those things that we deeply and truly want. And then, looking to those things that inspire us and uplift us and bring us hope. But it also wants us to really like ground that hope in this newfound like spiritual wisdom that we've acquired through this Saturn in Pisces transit and really like in this emotional wisdom as well. This new moon also really wants us to like dream big and be inspired, but also, build something real rather than like, rushing towards something that, seems expansive and fun and exciting in the moment. And so really try to trust your inner compass during this time and, listen to your intuition. There is a very intuitive quality to, this whole lunation. There's a lot going on, but really try to trust your inner compass more than like any external validation or external advice. So really use your values and your desires and, what you want most out of life as that inner compass, and then shoot your arrow in that direction and set your intentions in that direction, but then also come up with a plan. That's the Saturn part of it. And so use this new moon to set intentions around growth and expansion and intentions that really push you outside of your comfort zone. And then as you're doing that, write down a game plan on how you intend to, get out of that comfort zone. And then with this Saturn square, it's kind of like we're being asked to practice patience as we continue to dream big. You could also set new intentions around inviting more adventures and more fun and more excitement into your life, whether that's like actual physical traveling and like, traveling the world, or, it could be like something as small as like, trying out a new restaurant in your town or wherever. Anything that gets you out of your comfort zone. And so just trying something new. And so challenge yourself to broaden your horizons, and that inner exploration is also really important under this new moon. So I highly recommend doing something like tangible for this new moon, whether that's like, writing out your intentions physically, or, I recommend actually doing a vision board for this new moon. It's one thing to like, think your intentions in your head, but it's a whole other thing once you like get it out of your head and you like physically write it down, or you like are physically cutting out, pieces of magazine and gluing it to a piece of paper or cardboard or whatever, because that really is that first step in kind of, bringing our visions and our dreams down into this physical reality and making it real. Because the thing is that you have to know that whatever it is that you want, it already exists. It's just a matter of making it physical in your reality. And so you kind of have to be careful about, what it is that you really want, because the universe can get creative sometimes. So don't be afraid to get really specific about what it is that you want and, create a physical and visual representation of it. And so again, doing a vision board, I highly recommend. And so this new moon in Sagittarius is here to help set us on a new path, and not like a spontaneous, reckless one, but one that invites more experiences and more adventures and more possibilities into our lives, and one that is built on a solid foundation of faith and belief in ourselves. So let this be a new beginning around something meaningful and something that actually supports your long-term growth. And yeah, I think that is all I've got to say for this new moon. I said a lot, so if you stuck with me this long, thank you so much for watching, and maybe comment down below where this new moon is happening for you and what you're thinking might come from this new moon. And yeah, until next time, love you, bye!